Hello there, a wonderful day to you. Into the fall season we go, and taking a look ahead to winter. Do you remember the big old Gulf Coast winter storm from last winter? That was one of the more unique historic elements that did end up happening, where 6 to 12 inches fell in a lot of spots right up against the ocean. Crazy stuff. Last winter's temperatures not super warm across the country as a whole, but not exactly super cold. If you look at North America as a whole, it was still pretty warm with a lot of that warmth into Canada. But definitely some cold periods for sure across the Northwest into the plains at times. And snowfall-wise, it certainly stood out with the southern area painted in several inches of snow. Decent amount with a couple storms from like Oklahoma to Tennessee to the Carolinas. But then not much of an increase as you got further north. So not a lot once you got into portions like Iowa, Illinois, southern Michigan. Some spots in the snow belt did not get that much while others did. The East Coast, especially along the coast, not a ton, but definitely much more across portions of the West. We've seen this trend where we have seen about 10 to 30% less snowfall that falls when precipitation happens versus rainfall. It goes back to the 70s. The exception being on the two coasts, but that has not necessarily been a consistent trend. That's been because of a few different years. Drought conditions are growing across the country. We'll see what kind of influence that is going to have over the course of this winter. Probably will hold at least a small one. We're starting to see La Nina conditions form in the equatorial Pacific Ocean with those below average sea surface temperatures. Very warm weather. With all that air and ocean temperatures further off towards the north, that's going to have an influence. Typically in a La Nina pattern, you have that jet stream that dips on down, allows for some cold air into the northwest, northern plains, and then the warmth across the south, especially into the southeast. Looking at some anomalies based off analogs. This is years that have had some similar type weather to what we expect as far as oceanic and atmospheric conditions, placing that coldest air into the northwest. Fairly warm weather for the eastern portion of the country, but computer models are mixed on that idea. And we have an idea that is definitely going to be a little bit colder into portions of the upper Midwest, even into portions of the Great Lakes, but plenty of warmth across the south. Those big East Coast cities, a little bit warmer than average, as it looks like right now. Not all models in agreement, but the wild card area into the Pacific, or I should say into the Great Lakes, for if it's going to be a little bit warmer, if it's going to be a lot colder, that's certainly there, depending on how far south some of those Arctic intrusions do reach. But I think we do see at least some pockets of below average air throughout the season averaged out. Depending on that mild Pacific air with those warm ocean temperatures across the northern Pacific bordering portions of Canada and Alaska, that could influence some big dips in the jet stream at times, something to keep an eye on. Snowfall-wise and precipitation-wise in general, where you have that colder air and above average precipitation, yeah, you have some pretty good chances at decent snow, but I don't think it's going to be into the Gulf Coast for this winter with below average precipitation expected, but could be pretty wet from, let's say, Missouri through Pittsburgh, Montreal, all the way west into Seattle compared to average. So that main snow area could be very well into the northern Rockies, back into the Twin Cities, maybe portions of Chicago. That's been kind of rare, maybe even into portions of southern Michigan. We'll have to keep a close eye on that. But yeah, it looks like it'll be great for some of the mountains into Utah and towards portions of Idaho. Omaha, Nebraska could have a little bit above average, while it's below average further south in southern Missouri, southern Indiana, the Tennessee Valley. And that wild card area will be in the middle for sure, while it's going to be probably a less snowy winter again for our nation's capital, into the Boston area as well. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate it. If you want accurate weather information, detailed consulting for your business, check us out for more. We'll have future winter updates as well. Take care.